Right now, 10 states owe the federal government nearly $46 billion in unemployment funds. All of this while some of those states sit on a budget surplus and others have COVID funds they haven't even spent. Joining us right now to break down the waste of the week is the founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. Adam, good morning to you. Here's why this is important for everyone at home. Unemployment benefits are funded by taxes levied on businesses, so those 10 states could potentially see big tax hikes on employers next year. This is why this is important, too. They borrowed money, but it's not interest-free, right? Tell us about this.
Well, absolutely. These states have been fiscally irresponsible. So states like California, they had a $75 billion budget surplus last year. And on top of that, the American taxpayer was very generous with California. Through the American Rescue Act, we also bailed out California for another $27 billion. The case of Colorado is much the same. They ran nearly a $4 billion budget surplus last year, and the American taxpayer bailed out Colorado for an additional $4 billion. So it is absolutely irresponsible spending, irresponsible use of their budget when they give pay hikes in part to their public employees rather than paying off their federal debts, in this case, their unemployment liability to Uncle Sam.
What would prompt such a need for them to borrow money for unemployment payments?
So there's been a lot of fraud in the system. For example, there are estimates that up to 50 cents on every dollar of unemployment insurance payment benefit was stolen by criminals and con artists and crime syndicates across the country. States like Ohio had a big problem. They ran a $3 billion budget surplus. Through the American Rescue Act, Ohio was bailed out for an additional nearly $6 billion. But the problems in the system and fraud were so extreme that even the governor, Mike DeWine, received an unemployment benefit fraud check in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, and speaking of Ohio, Hawaii, Nevada, West Virginia, I read here, I was looking at some of the charts here, they actually paid off their debts before that interest kicked in. That interest, by the way, 2.3% that of the $45.6 billion that's still owed to the federal government. So you have these states that were able to pay off those debts, right? How are these states able to pay them off and the other ones not?
Well, the ultimate inspiration is a deadline. So Ohio snuck underneath that deadline. And so did states like Nevada and Hawaii and others. And that's good. They paid off their debt to taxpayers. And now they got to cure the systemic problems within their system so they can do a better job next time of helping people who have real needs.
Speaking of government funding, I read also that your organization took a look at how much money the federal government allocated for that COVID aid. And while $4.7 trillion has been allocated for aid, at least $1.4 trillion does remain unspent. Sounds like the infrastructure bill could maybe use some of that money. Where is that money being held right now?
Well, Jan, it's sitting there in government bank accounts unspent. And this should drive the American people absolutely crazy. Congress threw nearly $5 trillion at COVID aid, and $1.4 trillion of it is sitting in government bank accounts. As a matter of fact, our auditors at OpenTheBooks.com identified that 43 federal agencies have in excess of $1 billion just sitting there, sitting in the government bank account unspent.
So why aren't we just taking those funds and putting them back into the government so that it can be repurposed? What's the holdup at this point?
Well, common sense in Washington, D.C. isn't that common nowadays. But you have some bipartisan consensus, for instance, in the United States Senate, emerging on this issue. The West Virginian Senator Joe Manchin, he has advocated a strategic pause. Let the COVID aid work through the system before we spend trillions of dollars more. And that call has been joined by the junior senator in Iowa, U.S. Senator Joni Ernst.
$1.4 trillion just sitting there at this point. Adam Andrzejewski, CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jan.